Well, what a treat this is. Dr. Isaac Bogosh, who we normally connect with over, is it Skype? Is that what we've been using to connect with you?
Yeah.
We normally connect with Dr. Bogosh over Skype, but we said, you know what, we've been talking to Dr. Bogosh every week for the last, 2.5 years, pretty much. You've been helping us out, leading us all the way through COVID-19 and all that's happened in the pandemic. And of course, monkeypox and other infectious diseases. We've talked about that. So we thought we need to bring Dr. Bogosh in for a conversation. And so you graciously accepted our invitation. So it's great to see you here. Thanks for being here.
It's lovely to meet you in the flesh.
It's great to meet you as well in the flesh. Okay, but we got to really talk about what exactly is happening here. And of course, COVID-19 hospitalizations at about a 2-month high right now. We've all just gathered for Thanksgiving. What are your concerns and what are you seeing?
Well, for starters, I think it's important to recognize that we know there's a seasonal component to this virus. To no one's surprise, there's a rise in cases in the fall, as we've been talking about for months and months and months. And if we take a step back, too, and look at some of the metrics that we have in Ontario, even though we don't have a ton of these metrics available, there are still some available. We know that the testing is consistent and the percentage of tests that are positive is going up. We know that wastewater surveillance signs are going up in many parts of the province. And in fact, if you look at Canada, there is a real rise in hospitalizations related to COVID. COVID's here. We're starting to see more COVID cases. And again, to no one's surprise, we also have the same tools available to us to protect ourselves. We have vaccines, we have masks, we can improve the ventilation in indoor settings. So there's a lot that we can do to protect ourselves and those around us from getting this infection.
Well, that, of course, is good to hear. And of course, we can continue to mask and vaccines. And vaccines is really the next question here because NACI has now Health Canada has approved the Pfizer bivalent vaccine. NACI put out some recommendations last week about that. Maybe you can help us sort of understand or sort of decipher the messaging around that, because there's a lot to that in your decision making of picking a vaccine or booster.
Right. I think at the end of the day, the key points are, number one, there's a strong recommendation. The NACI actually says people over the age of 65 and people with underlying medical conditions should go out and get that booster vaccine. They absolutely should. For everyone else, the message is you may get it. It's available and you may get it. So there's a bit of nuance there. But for people with risk factors for severe infection, you should get it. The second point is timing, right? The key time to get it is about 6 months after your most recent infection or your most recent vaccination. And of course, there's wiggle room there. You can shorten that to as little as 3 months, and that would be important for people, for example, who have pretty significant exposures or risk factors for severe infection. And then lastly, there's a couple of products that are out or soon to be out. We've got this new one that was approved, this BA.5 vaccine from Pfizer. We already have seen the Moderna's BA.1 bivalent vaccine that's been available in Ontario for several weeks. And if we look at NACI's guidance, they basically treat them as equivalent, right? We don't have any head-to-head comparison of these two vaccines. These vaccines will be available in family physicians' offices and pharmacies across the province, but we don't have a head-to-head comparison of which one is better or not. Maybe later there will be, but we just don't have that now. So the message is really, if you're eligible for one of these vaccines, go out and get one. Now, of course, we always have to timestamp these conversations. Maybe later on there'll be a preference for one over the other, but we just don't have that now, and that's why they say just go out and get one of these vaccines if you're eligible. Is there any research data or any sense of not the level of protection, but the timing of protection that these new vaccines get? Because, you talk to some people and they're saying, I'm up to, shot number 5 or shot number 6, and these only came out about a year and a half ago. Like, do these last longer? Do we know that? Well, one important point is that we've seen that these vaccines really hold up and stand up to protection against severe infection, such as hospitalization and death. And the vaccines have done a remarkable job at that. Unfortunately, when we got into the Omicron era, we saw that there was waning immunity and waning protection, from these vaccines in terms of protecting us against infection and onward transmission. And that's it's a shame, because earlier on in the pandemic, the vaccines did a really good job at that. The hope is that these newer bivalent vaccines will bring back some durable protection against infection and onward transmission. But again, we just don't know. We don't know. But there's completely the expectation that these will still stand up against more severe infections, such as hospitalization and death. And that's why it's so important for people who are over the age of 65, or in Ontario, they say over the age of 60, and people with underlying medical conditions that put them at risk for severe infection to really go out and get those booster vaccines. We are under-vaccinated, especially those cohorts, and it's extremely important that those individuals get a booster shot. Okay, let's talk about international infectious diseases, which I know you keep your eye on all the time, right? We've got hearing cases of Ebola, cholera, measles even as well. Should we worry, or how much should we worry? Well, COVID taught us that infections that occur in one part of the planet can certainly come to any other part of the planet in a matter of 24 hours. It's always a good idea to keep an eye open on what's happening all over the world. Now, some things are more likely to land in Canada than others. For example, measles is extremely transmissible, and there's a lot of measles, unfortunately, all over the world. And, sadly, we are seeing under-vaccination in measles in many Canadian communities. Ebola, obviously, that's a concern in Uganda at the moment in time, and that might be a more regional concern. And, the risk of importing a case to Canada is extraordinarily low. It's not 0%. We saw exported cases of Ebola during the 2014 outbreak in West Africa. It's a low but non-zero risk of importing cases. But again, you've got to keep your eye on these things. You've got to be prepared, and that's a federal, provincial, municipal, and hospital level of preparedness. And that's actually what's happening behind the scenes.
And I wonder if you can kind of drill down a bit on that in terms of what the infectious diseases world has learned or been taught by COVID-19. We're certainly not out of the woods yet when it comes to COVID-19. We're in a much better place. And I'm sure you could take this question a number of different ways, whether it's political, medical, science, whatever. But, what are the big lessons that you're seeing right now, I suppose?
Well, two things come to mind. One is that, sadly, COVID is not going to be our last pandemic. There will be another one. No one wants to talk about it, but it's a sad reality. And we're not really prepared. We need better global coordination, global communication strategies, and early detection systems, especially in countries where we know that many of these viruses may emerge. They happen to be lower income countries and have fewer resources. And we really have to treat this as a global issue because it is a global issue. It's not a Canadian issue. It's not an Ontario issue. These are global issues. So we really need to support our friends and neighbors all over the world to help with their public health infrastructure and their medical care as well. And the second thing, I think, if it's more local, but it also can be global as well. If we look back and we think about the spring and winter of 2021, when we were rolling out vaccines, never before have we seen issues of equity on the front page of every paper in the country. We've got to look at our long-term care facilities. We've got to vaccinate essential workers. We've got to consider lower income neighborhoods. We had tremendous momentum towards building a more equitable Canada. And we had, it's unfortunate. I think we've lost some of that momentum, and I think we really need to regain that momentum, not just for COVID, but obviously for every other aspect of life.
What about messaging and communication in and around COVID, right? Because, you've come on, like we said, for so many days and weeks and months, here on CP24, we sort of scaled it back a little bit. But, there was so many scientists. There's not one voice. That's hard to see and hear. But, that's been, I think, such a big issue that's dominated COVID is messaging and anti-messaging and counter-information, misinformation.
Honestly, I don't have a good approach to that because this is really the first pandemic in the social media age.
Right.
Everybody has a platform. I think we could talk for days about this, but I'll keep it brief. I think one of the things is how do we globally and nationally combat misinformation and disinformation that gets amplified online, sometimes even makes its way into the mainstream media. That's a major issue. The other thing, too, is really ensuring we have better coordination of the message between senior political and public health officials at federal, provincial, municipal levels, just so that there's less confusion among citizens. We saw so many times where you have, one province taking policy A and another province taking a completely different approach to the pandemic. That leads to confusion and ultimately mistrust. And, we're talking about public health, medicine, and science. You need public trust and public buy-in for these things to be successful. So I think there's a lot we need to work on that front.
Well, I tell you, I know from the feedback that I get and we get around here that you have helped sort of sort through and sift through a lot of the confusion when it's come to COVID-19. We're so pleased you came in here this morning, Dr. Bogosh. Great to meet you in person again. Thanks so much for the time.
My
really
pleasure.
Appreciate this. Thank you so much.
From Bay Street to Main Street, boardrooms to dining rooms, sooner or later, just about every conversation these days circles back to affordable housing, supply and demand, price point, and especially rising mortgage rates. Here to distill the latest data is TREB President Kevin Krieger. Kevin, good morning and welcome back.
Good morning. Thank you.
Well, let's recap and begin with GTA September sales compared to August and year over year.
So looking at, obviously, volume, we've seen a substantial decline in overall volume from September of 2021. So we are coming off of effectively a record year, but at the same time, a 44% reduction in overall sales volume obviously is substantial. One of the interesting elements, obviously, to look at is also the number of new listings. So new listings for September are at a 20-year low. which is obviously incredibly interesting and somewhat concerning to see. So sales effectively are equating to a larger percentage of new listings, leading to tighter inventory conditions in the marketplace.
Now, we are the big city, the vertical city with more cranes than anywhere else comparable on the planet. What about condominiums?
So condos generally have obviously fared better in this period of adjustment, largely based on their more affordable entry price point. So we've certainly seen more activity in the condo space as opposed to the freehold space. And that's sort of evidenced by the difference in the home price index increase versus the average price decrease that we've seen.
Yeah, how does the MLS HPI, the home price index, sort of, that formula factor into just about everything, including, comparables in neighborhoods?
So the HPI obviously compares more like-to-like properties, whereas average price obviously looks at the entire marketplace, the number of transactions, and the overall average of the price points of properties sold. Mm-hmm. So when you see a period where, for example, more condominiums sell than larger freehold equivalents, you definitely see a difference in average price versus the home price index. So the HPI gives a more robust review of property types as part of the classification.
And thanks to Chopper24 for those great live pictures of the city. Kevin, we're just weeks from a municipal election. Ipsos just had a poll for Treb. 71% of 416-905 residents feel municipal governments should focus more on supply and rent versus reducing demand. And I want to know more about givemeoptions.ca.
So givemeoptions.ca basically outlines a number of key policy areas that voters should be looking at, obviously, as we go into the municipal elections. When we look at the Ipsos polling that was done, obviously a large percentage of Torontonians, more than 71%, really see that supply is the issue in the marketplace long term. And despite focus at a number of levels of government on demand suppression policies, we see that they haven't worked. So certainly looking at opportunities and potential policy objectives to increase supply is really going to be the key discussion point on a go-forward basis.
Kevin Krieger, the president of TREB, the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. Hey, where can people reach out to you for more?
At treb.ca.
Kevin, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Go.
Oh, Dean, just dropped off the good sandwiches.
Cool, man.
Paul, heard so much about you.
Nice vest.
Movie man. You got my live Alantula?
Yeah, man.
Yo, big city.
Relax. I'm just here for the free sandwiches.
This guy posted a pic of him in a swimming pool. Is that true or what?
Yeah, man. I was in some pools.
No way, bro.
Acting Good is a new Can-Con sitcom premiering Monday on CTV Comedy Channel, correct? Yes. It's created by and stars Paul Wroblewskis as a young First Nations guy who returns home to his quirky clan on the res in remote Manitoba after sort of a failed attempt at big city life in the big smoke in Winnipeg. Acting Good in our hood, we welcome Paul Wroblewskis to CP24 Breakfast. Hey, good to meet you, man.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. You got a great smile.
It's cool seeing the clips,
Isn't
first
it
of all.
on the TV?
Yeah.
Ahead of time? Yeah.
That means it's all happening.
It is. Even though it's a little bit of a smaller screen, it's still the big screen.
Yeah, CTV, they can't change their mind
Not
now.
yet. Too late.
Commercials have aired, so we got them.
So listen to this. You're executive producer, you're creator, showrunner, and star.
That's crazy. And
I
don't answer emails, so that's crazy. I've got so many job titles.
You've learned the gig.
Yeah.
That's a lot on one plate. I want to know, what was the pitch like? Did you pitch this, or did they see your stand-up stuff and go, did the brass come searching you out?
No, it's actually Pat Thornton, who you saw in the clip, is another stand-up comedian. He's a renowned comedian here in Canada, renowned actor too as well.
We all know that.
But so he met me in Winnipeg at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, and he's like, yo, your story about being from the res is pretty cool. He's like, let's write something and pitch something. And then a year later, we were here in Toronto, and we got the TV show now on television.
Look, I love the show. I only got to see a bit of the first episode, like condensed.
Yeah.
It just has a lot of heart, like humor, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's got the heart, right?
Yeah.
And I think those are key elements to have together. So, your background, were you a class clown, man? Did you come from a funny family?
Man, I'm from a First Nations family. Like I grew up in Poplar River First Nation, which is a show is kind of loosely based off of, and I also grew up in North End Winnipeg, which I went to an Indigenous school, and our people are naturally funny people, so it's just something that I picked up on. I had older cousins, they would tease you, and if you cried, you couldn't hang out with them, and I wanted to hang out with them, so I learned how to tease them back and be funny. So it's a big part of our culture, the humor.
It's a bit of defense mechanism, but it's good fodder and good training for exactly this.
Yeah, for
right?
this and
What
for
you're
stand-up
doing.
comedy, which I also do on
Totally.
the side too. So it's good for both worlds.
So you come from, as you said, Poplar River. That's First Nation in Manitoba.
Yes.
Population 2,000-ish, right?
No. Population, it varies, but it's about 900. It's
Oh,
about, yeah,
so
it's a
small.
lot smaller than that. Very isolated. Shout out to everybody back home in Poplar.
Awesome.
I don't know if they're up this early.
Look, I'm
No,
sure
kidding.
everybody is up in everybody's business like it's no business
Yeah,
out there,
exactly.
right? That's the way it goes. This must be an infinity pool of material for you. You could do the show forever.
Yeah, we've got about 10 seasons already in our head that we can write out. It's
10 episodes, 10 seasons.
It's, I don't know if you've ever been to the Reserve, but it's a lot of laughing and it's a lot of drama too at the same time. So we combine those two things and we have this amazing show now.
And within the cast, you've got it all there. You got the love interest, you got the matriarch, the white guy shopkeeper, the lovable loser,
Yeah.
artsy neighbor,
Yeah.
the troubled teen, and then you.
And then we got me.
You're the sun that everything orbits around, right?
Yeah.
It's clearly a window into your world, right? In many respects. But I want to know because there's so many creative minds working on the show, talent-wise, on camera and behind. Was it the script gospel, or was there latitude to kind of ad-lib and play off it a bit and sort of some sort of improv?
We have such amazing talent and actors and people that come from the comedy world where we trust their instincts. So when they're on set, some of the actors will be like, yo, would it be funny if I went, instead of that? I'm like, yes,
that's
please.
cool.
Yes, please. So
You don't hear a lot of that.
No, we do, definitely. Because especially the main writers, myself, Pat, Eric, and Amber, we're comedians. So we're always open to funny. So if somebody has a funny suggestion for what they want to do, most of the time we're like, that works, let's do it. So
Funny wins,
yeah,
right?
and our cast, even though some of them are not stand-up comedians, are very, very funny comedically, just but naturally.
I say this is required viewing. Required viewing, absolutely. Acting Good premieres this coming Monday, 10:30 on the Comedy Channel. Paul Rublaskis, you're going places, man. I'm glad you came in here. You're a new friend of the show. Come back,
man, anytime.
Come back season 2 when
I'm not
you're
leaving.
a superstar, not just a star. Thanks very much, Lisa. Well, after a 3-year hiatus, Toronto celebrity gourmand Chef Joe Friday is bringing back his very popular underground series called The Chef Collective. These are live, action-packed culinary battles with prominent local chefs, and it's all done at local restos. The kickoff event happens Monday, and here with an appetizer is Chef Joe Friday. Good morning, Chef. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. And you know what? Props to you for wearing the Jays cap. Still got to sport him, right?
Yes, most definitely.
All right. Look, you're back after 3 years with the Chef Collective, and thank goodness because we're starving, Chef. I love your underground sort of indie vibe. Tell me how it all works and how people can get involved too.
Well, I mean, basically, it works. I just kind of look for chefs in Toronto. Toronto has a lot of really good chefs, and I look for them to compete in a live audience. I'm a sports fan, and having chefs compete in front of a live audience is absolutely amazing. So there's so much energy in the room, and you can get involved. Right now, we're kind of sold out, but you can get involved by going on our live feed that we'll be having.
Oh, it's great that you're sold out. It's awesome. That means things are very popular. I want to talk a bit about your co-host and who are some of the competing chefs from this amazing, multicultural universe of food we have here in Toronto.
My co-host is Chef Dev. Chef Devin's been doing everything. These are all around the world, all around the globe, cooking so many different amazing things. We've been at this since day one, 4 or 5 years. That's Dev right there. And then competing, we got Sam Medeiros. She's formerly of La Palma. She's going to be traveling the world next. We got Jerome from the Heartbreak Chef. He's an amazing cook as well. And then we have Imran from Wonderlust. A bunch of new up-and-coming chefs.
Awesome.
Giving them the opportunity to compete in front of a live audience.
And you got a top shelf, sort of top chef judging panel as well. Who are the taste testers here?
Afram Christine from Cheese Boutique. That's amazing. We got Rob Rainford. We got Chef Erica, the last season of Top Chef winner. And we have Paul Bomer. It will be hosted at his restaurant. So we have some really, really good judges that know everything a lot about food. So that's going to be really awesome. You
know what I love about your vibe and the way this whole package works with the Chef Collective? It's kind of, like you said it at the beginning, it's sort of a contact sport. It really makes it, it's one thing to work against the clock, but there's a lot of pressure. And, being a chef in the restaurant business yourself, the pressure's always there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pressure's there. This is live audience though, so it's even more pressure. And people are curious to see what you're going to come up with when the box is lifted from the secret ingredient. And it's just like sweat, pressure. I mean, so much energy to be in the room. It's absolutely one of the most amazing things that I have opportunity to create. So
It's it's incredible because it can be, even for the most seasoned chef, it can be with certain ingredients, it can be kind of terrifying, right? Having to work something and just to have something revealed to you, man, like to be able to do it and under the clock and under the pressure, it really brings, nothing is more creative, I don't think, than making delicious food for people and doing it under pressure. Now, obviously, there's bragging rights here. Beyond that, and all the great food and the fun and the fellowship, there's a really cool prize at the end, and there's a great a component of charity as well. Tell me about those.
yeah, so we started a charity, Habitat for Humanity. They really help in Toronto, putting people in homes, getting them set up for their first new home. That's really awesome. So I love bringing the charity component. And the winners of the competition get to take a vacation. So that's going to be crazy. They're going to go to an island vacation with some cash in hand and tons of side prizes. So it's just incredible. So a great opportunity to win something.
Last thing, Chef, you're an esteemed CIA, not CIA spy, the Culinary Institute of America graduate. You've worked in top kitchens around the world, right? Technique is important, but I want your opinion on this. Hasn't poverty and necessity done just as much as like Michelin stars and scholarship to really drive forward food culture and, making more out of less?
Most definitely. Most of the cuisines around the world that we revel over right now come from poor backgrounds, come from dire parts of the world where, we're eating certain different foods that are delicacies now that some of the poorer, the lower class people from the history have eaten. Right. So that's just a fact,
That's cool. And last thing, I lied. One more thing. COVID complicated everything, all of our lives. Did it give you a new appreciation of how important food is, not just, for flavor and sustenance, but, to help boost our immunity and that kind of thing?
100%. COVID really, really made me think about how I eat. I thought about a lot to just eat healthier food, although I do want a poutine or something greasy every once in a while, but I think there's a nice balance, And this competition, the Chef Collective competition, is going to be a great opportunity to get people back in a room and feel that energy that chefs like to bring. Chefs love having people in their restaurant.
Yes, amen, and right on to that. Thanks very much. Chef Joe Friday, the Chef Collective kicks off Monday, October 17th. This Monday at Bomer Restaurant. That's Ossington, north of Queen. Great event, great stuff, Chef. Thanks, I'm glad you're back. And maybe we'll get you in here in the flesh sometime and make some real food for us.
That'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah, that's a date and a deal. Thanks, Chef.